Welcome back to the California Conversation. I'm Tess Abraham. As you are all aware, it is the 3rd of July, which means that tomorrow is the 4th of July. And to no one's surprise, this is my favorite holiday, so I could not let the show go on without taking the time to talk about it. Why do I love 4th of July so much? Well, obviously I love America, I love our country, I'm very patriotic, but more than that, I love dwelling on the reality of how smart and bold and brave our founding fathers were. It was truly revolutionary for us then, and it is still revolutionary for us today. But as many of us think about the state of America and the state of our current political and governmental climate, often you will hear the question posed, what would the founding fathers think? What would they think about the top political issues of today? What would they think about the men and women who are running our government? What would they think about the will of the American people and the very values and things that we are fighting for on a daily basis? And honestly, as I look at California, I have the same questions about our own state. What would the founding fathers think of the current state of California? Are we so far removed from 1776 that we have allowed the very same grievances that the founding fathers had in 1776 actually just go on in our state without challenging them and without pushing back against them? So that is what we are going to talk about today. But before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you stay up to date on all things California politics. And if you want more information about sources for everything cited in today's episode, then you can check it all out on my corresponding article on my website, which is linked below. So, I want to go through some of the main grievances that the founding fathers had and listed out in the very Declaration of Independence back in 1776, and I want to compare them with the political climate today in California. But before we dive into that, I really want to set the scene as to why this is important. After all, this is not just a history lesson. It's not meant to just be an interesting thought experiment. Thomas Jefferson himself said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. If we believe that the rights afforded to us in the United States are morally good and that they're right and that they should be inalienable to all people, which I do believe, then we have the responsibility to vigilantly protect them and to be on the lookout for any harm that could come to them. People often say that history has a way of repeating itself, and they say that because it's true. Governments have a way of growing. They have a way of extending their power, and suddenly the rights that were once afforded to the people and protected by the government are now no longer being extended to the people. So it is necessary that we ask ourselves, is the vision that the founding fathers had for America back in 1776 the same vision that we have for America today? And that starts by evaluating right where we live, our own communities and our own states, which means for us, it starts in California. We only make real change when we identify real issues around us and we see where we have started to stray away from the original vision of America. And we don't do this, again, just for history's sake. We don't even do it for the sake of the founding fathers and for what they thought was right. We do it for what we know is morally and objectively true, right, and good. And we don't want to repeat the same tyranny and the same struggles that our founding fathers went through. There's an entire reason that they wrote the Declaration of Independence. So why would we repeat that history when instead we could be building on it? So with that said, let's dive into our grievances. The first grievance listed in the Declaration of Independence reads, quote, "He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good." This grievance highlights how the laws that the colonists wanted to implement had to be approved by the king. And so the very heart of this issue really is the denial of true self-governance. The problem was that the king was often incentivized not to allow them to pass certain laws that he disagreed with. One striking example of this is that the colonists wanted to abolish the slave trade. Jefferson actually included this in his original draft of the Declaration of Independence before he took it out. The problem is that the king had financial interests that he wanted to keep in play, and so because of that, he refused to let them pass that law. He was actively opposing moral legislation that the people who lived in the colonies wanted to pass simply to protect his own interests. So the people felt that they could not govern themselves the way that they wanted to. Again, they didn't have that self-governance. They were subject to the whims and the interests of the king, who lived very far away from them and was not actually ruling them on a day-to-day basis. So do we see the same grievance happening in California today? I do want to start and preface this by saying, of course, our context is different. We elect our government leaders. We do have representation. And so even if you disagree with the leaders who were elected in California specifically, still it is the will of the people and the majority of voters who put them in power. So that's a key difference. I'm not saying that Gavin Newsom or anyone in California is necessarily a king. It's a different circumstance. But there are still very important parallels that I think we need to distinguish in order to keep us from going down the path of falling into the same tyranny that Britain was exerting over the colonists back in the 1700s. And this is important because abuse of power doesn't happen overnight. I think people have this vision that someone will just walk in and declare themselves a dictator. And sometimes that happens, but it's a little bit of the extreme circumstance. Usually abuse of power happens slowly over time, and it starts with getting people comfortable with the small overreaches that they start to take. And then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you're living in an authoritarian regime, and you wonder, how did we get here? Well, we got here through small steps of taking too much power for themselves, the people who are in government and in leadership, without being checked by the people. And so we do need to be asking ourselves this question when it comes to our state and California of, is the same pattern happening today? Now, I would argue that we are seeing similar instances of this today in California, and the main way that we're seeing it is in local elections and in city councils. Take, for example, Huntington Beach. It's a more conservative city, and their city council is conservative by majority. They tried to enact a voter ID law back last year, and so they were saying that for their city specifically, that when people showed up to vote, that they needed to show proof of identification or of citizenship in order to be able to cast their ballot at the ballot box. Now, the majority of voters approved this. So this was not just the whims of one or two elected officials. This was the majority of voters in that area who agreed they wanted voter ID laws in place. And do you know what happened? Is that our Attorney General, Rob Bonta, paired with our Governor, Gavin Newsom, sued the city, and there are still ongoing battles between them as to whether this law could be enacted. And then on top of that, Gavin Newsom did sign into law a bill that said that across the state that no city or county could enact this type of law. So basically directly in response to what the people said that they wanted, Gavin Newsom stepped in and said, no, you can't have that. I don't agree with that. I will not let you pass that. Does that sound familiar to someone that we just talked about in history? And in case you think that that's just an isolated incident, it very much is not. We've also talked about some of the school district battles between individual districts and the state. And so just reminding you of Temecula Valley, they rejected certain school curriculum that included outright LGBTQ material. And this was based on what parents in the actual district wanted. This again was majority vote of the people who are directly represented by the school board. And what happened? Once again, they were slapped with a lawsuit and they were slapped with a massive fine. I think it was $1.5 million that Gavin Newsom fined the little local school district, as well as he ordered the curriculum himself and had it sent to the school to be distributed to the students. So again, it's a case where we have people saying that they want a certain way of governance enacted, and then we have the governor stepping in and smacking it down, saying you don't get to have that, even though that's what you want and everyone in your community agrees with you. I'm going to step in and tell you how your district should be run. And there's still so many more examples. I mean, there was a duplex bill that was passed that has major pushback from cities like Pasadena, Redondo Beach, Beverly Hills. There was a recall in San Francisco back in 2022 where certain elected officials were removed by majority vote. And yet it took months for the process because it was so drawn out through legal battles. There was also Chino Valley and Rockland Unified School District, which were more school district battles where parents wanted to vote to pass a parental notification bill. But again, our state says, no, you can't do that, and smack them with fines and lawsuits. So there's just countless examples, even in the past few years, of these instances where, again, people are saying, I want my voice to be heard. This is what I want. And the people around them are saying, I agree with you. That's how I want to be governed. And then someone at the state level, way up high, Gavin Newsom is not involved day to day in these small districts or counties. And yet he is saying, no, you don't actually have any right to self-governance. I'm not going to respect the outcome of local elections or of school district decisions. And instead, I'm going to mandate how things are going to be run. Our founding fathers recognized that this was not sustainable. People need representation, but more than that, people need self-determination. It was clear back in the 1700s that the model was not working, where the people were not being heard and weren't being allowed to govern themselves in a way that made sense for them. They saw the king as very far off. The rest of Britain was very far off, and so they needed to have some authority, some power to again have that self-determination to say, this is how we want to be governed, and we all agree on it. So they recognized that was a need, and that was a main grievance with the king. And unfortunately, we're seeing the same consolidation of power happen in California, around the governor, around the attorney general, around others who are higher up in our government, to basically take a statewide mandate approach rather than respecting the choices and values of local governments. And it can be so frustrating when you feel like people are just not listening to you. But do you know who is listening to you? Are the professionals over at today's sponsor, Connected Care. Connected Care is an online therapy platform that's centered on doing exactly what its name says that it will do, on connecting patients with providers. Their mission is to make quality mental health care more accessible and supportive for both patients and the providers who give them that support. If you're seeking support, Connected Care offers a wide network of compassionate, licensed professionals who are here to walk with you through whatever you're facing, whether it be anxiety, depression, or just the overwhelming aspects of daily life. And if medication is part of your care plan, they also have medical providers who can support you in managing prescriptions and making any adjustments that you might need with attentiveness along the way. Now, if you're a provider, Connected Care also has your back. They help to take on that administrative load, so they will do billing, credentialing, insurance, and so much more, so that you can focus on doing what you do best, connecting and caring for your clients. It's about making space for more meaningful, uninterrupted mental health care. So whether you are looking for therapy or you're a therapist looking to serve your clients without the burnout, Connected Care is the perfect place to start, right from the comfort of your own home. Visit www.connectedcareinc.com to learn more and to get started. That's connectedcareinc.com. Because no one should have to navigate mental health alone, and thankfully with Connected Care, you don't have to. But getting back to our grievances in California, that is not the only grievance that I have with our state government, so let's keep reading. The next grievance that they write reads, quote, "He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people." Now, in the context of 1776, what Britain was doing is they were sending so many tax collectors, customs agents, and enforcers to the colonies who really operated with unchecked authority. The colonist complaint was really about this explosion in unelected officials who are wielding unchecked power. Now, today, California's massive regulatory state mirrors that in form and even in function. We have so many unelected agencies and officials who basically write laws. Think about the California Air Resources Board. This is one that I've brought up a lot. We've brought them up when it comes to carbon emissions and air pollution. They have mandated things like electric vehicles. They have impacted the cost of gas prices, and they even have say in things like building codes and so much more. But none of these things are things that are voted on by the people, and often they're not even voted on by legislatures. These are massive implications for your life and for the lives of those people who are in those fields of business across our state. And it's not just CARB, it's also the California Energy Commission. They regulate what appliances you can have. And I've experienced this firsthand because in my kitchen, our faucet is just a faucet that the water goes straight down in. And so there's not really great water pressure. And so I looked at buying an attachment that would change the flow. Anyway, I looked on Amazon and I wasn't allowed to buy that and have it shipped to California because it is outlawed in California. You are not allowed under their regulations to have that sort of faucet attachment because you can only buy low flow appliances. So these agencies have authority that affects your day-to-day life, and yet you have no say at all in what they are doing. Maybe this seems like a small issue to you. You're thinking, what's the big deal? There's some appliances, there's some EV mandates, whatnot. It really doesn't matter that much. But all of these add up over time, and that's how all of a sudden it becomes really hard for small businesses to operate in our state. It's also how we end up having a shortage of homes because a lot of these regulations also center on housing development. And so all of a sudden we have low supply, we have high demand, and that raises the prices, which makes your cost of living so much more expensive here. Or think of your favorite local business being shut down because they got slapped with a bunch of fines due to non-compliance with the newest regulation that they put in place. We as Californians live under an alphabet soup of unelected officials and agencies who make rules that we can't vote on and enforce them with penalties that we can't appeal. We really shouldn't be okay with that, and the Founding Fathers were not okay with a similar situation happening to them. You don't need to be worried about a king when you have thousands of bureaucrats who have unchecked power. But let's move on to one of the most critical and one of the most emotionally charged grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence that I believe applies directly to today. Quote, he, being the king, has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. Now, what this line does is this accuses King George of completely abandoning his duty to govern the colonies justly. The king's actions, especially after the colonists started to resist some of these actions, were interpreted as revoking their rights as English subjects entirely. And Parliament's Prohibitory Act of 1775 explicitly removed British protection from colonial trade and declared the colonies to be in rebellion. So in short, he really gave up on governing the colonies and he started to punish and attack the colonies, which means that he essentially abandoned any claim that he had to just rule. And this is something that I think is one of the most prominent characteristics of our governor and our state government today. Our government has proven time and time again that it seeks to enforce its own agenda, regardless of what is actually good for the people under its care. How has it done that? Where do I even begin? The list is so long. Look at the passage of Prop 47 and the people wanting to reverse it last year with Prop 36. Through Proposition 47, for over a decade, progressive DAs have enacted policies that effectively decriminalized theft, drug use, and public disorder. Retail theft has just skyrocketed as a result. Drug crime has skyrocketed across our state. And for years, there have been several initiatives to repeal Prop 47 and to put basic law and order back in place, but it only passed just last year. Now, Proposition 36, which repealed Prop 47, was passed by voters with a 70% majority vote. 70% of voters wanted Prop 47 to be rolled back. But do you know where Gavin Newsom stood on the issue? He tried to kill Proposition 36 before it even got to the ballot. He did not support it. He didn't listen to the people in what their concerns were or what they wanted. And instead, he was doing everything he could to get it taken off the ballot so that it could not be enacted. That is directly in opposition to the will of the people that he governs, and it's directly opposed to their public safety and to their concerns about their well-being. That alone screams to me a complete abdication of his responsibility to seek the protection and safety of literally millions of Californians who are directly under his care. But it doesn't stop there. Look at the homelessness crisis. California has the largest homeless population in the United States, despite spending billions of dollars on it annually. Laws and court rulings prevent cities from cleaning up homeless encampments, even when they're endangering communities, and families and business owners have to live among situations where there are needles and tents with absolutely no protection under the law. Once again, abandonment. Or look at the state of parental rights. I mean, schools are teaching gender ideology to students and they're concealing gender transitions from parents. And they're doing it with legal basis because Governor Newsom signed a law, I think 2 years ago now, that says that schools do not have to notify parents if their child expresses gender dysphoria or transitions from another gender. Plus, more than just gender ideology, we talked a few weeks ago about the passage of Assembly Bill 84, which is in the works, and that would strip away a lot of funding and resources and choice for non-classroom-based charter schools, which really are the best option for giving parents the most flexibility to be involved in their child's education. Gavin Newsom and the California government do not care about your right to raise your child in alignment with your beliefs and your values. They want to strip that right away from you, and they want to say that they're the parent now and they have the right to raise your child whatever way they see fit in line with their ideology. The bottom line is that our government in all areas has completely abandoned its duty to protect you and your rights and your beliefs. Our own governor has led the state into such disastrous ruin that he has effectively laid aside his fundamental responsibilities as our governor and instead has almost waged a war against the very people that he was elected to serve. I mean, just look at the fact that we have the highest taxes in our nation while people are struggling to make ends meet and while our cities are crumbling from a lot of these issues. Look at our massive state budget, which is now exceeding $300 billion annually, and yet the issues just continue to multiply, even though we're spending billions of dollars on all of these different programs and social welfare initiatives. Speaking of the welfare initiatives, we pay the cost for the Medi-Cal costs for illegal immigrants, people who are not even citizens, who are supposed to be protected by the government and the governor. And additionally, we raised the minimum wage into oblivion, and we've even piloted universal basic income across parts of California, making us a complete and total socialist welfare nightmare. In 1776, tyranny meant rejecting the will of the people. In 2025, in California, it means drowning the people in taxes, smothering them in regulations, and calling it progress. California refuses to admit that people know what is good for their lives and that people flourish the most when the government gets out of their lives. So, what would our founding fathers think? They would be appalled. They risked their lives to escape true and real tyranny. And we sit here comfortable and desensitized to the soft tyranny that is being perpetuated all around us. And I just want to drive this point home by reading you a few of their direct quotes. John Adams once said, "A constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever." Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." So this Independence Day, let's stop pretending that we're free and start demanding that we actually live free, actually make California the land of the free, the same way that we can say that other states are across our nation. It doesn't have to take revolution. It just takes resolve. Be resolved today to continue showing up, to keep being informed, to keep speaking out against these injustices and finding ways to make real change. Show up at your local school boards. Run for office if you want to. Just in whatever you do, speak the truth without fear. The battle for liberty didn't end in 1776. It continues today, right here in California. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope it was helpful for you as you navigate life in our state. And I hope that you have a wonderful 4th of July spent with friends and family, grilling burgers or hot dogs, and just enjoying the freedoms that we have afforded to us here in America. Please spread the word and share this show with your friends, family, and fellow Californians. You can follow me on social media at It's Tess Abraham, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode of The California Conversation.